Hello, aspirants. Welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I'm here Harpreet Singh with a daily analysis of the Hindu from 19th of December 2024. This is a QR code where you can basically find this particular PDF along with other material that is required for your preparation. So, what all topics we have taken for today's analysis? Please have a look. Section 6A of the Citizenship Act, generic medicines, the concept and the issues associated with that. Along with it, we have the Ganges River Dolphin, INS Nirdeshak, CCTNS, and the Cyclone Chido. All these have to be or would be analyzed in today's newspaper. Let's begin with today's analysis. Main topics. Section 6A of the Citizenship Act, why it fails exam. Now, please understand, in order to understand what this particular editorial talks about, we will have to understand the brief background, historical dimension, what Section 6 is, and then possibly it will be easier for us to analyze this particular editorial. So let's begin with the historical background and the dimensions that are associated with Section 6A. Okay, historical background. Now you very well know that in 1971, we basically broke Pakistan into two halves. What was the East Pakistan later on formed Bangladesh. And during the freedom struggle of Bangladesh, we realized that a lot of migrants basically came to India in millions. And a lot many moved to the region of Assam also. So in context to that, we realized that in 1971, Assam faced an influx of illegal migrants from Bangladesh, primarily stemming from Bangladesh Liberation War. This migration was a significant concern for the local population because you see, the people who were living there as indigenous population of Assam said, why the people from the other place or other country are coming and settling here? Now that would be impacting their culture, their language, their religion, along with the overall demography that is present in that particular region of Assam. So, in 1979, All Assam Students Union, ASU, spearheaded a movement demanding detection and deportation of these migrants. So this basically union formed as a pressure group demanding the government to remove all these people who have come up to in their land and settled over here because they are illegal migrants. Then ASU claimed that presence of these migrants threatened their culture, language, and demographic integrity of the indigenous Assamese people. Now, obviously, the people who came to Assam were in lakhs. Obviously, they settled in Bengal and other regions also. If you take the total demography, it was in millions who basically came from Bangladesh. But lakhs and lakhs of people settled in the region of Assam also. Now, these pressure groups that were formed in order to protect their cultural integrity basically pressurize the government that you need to remove them from the state of Assam because that is against our culture. Then, following 6 years of agitation from 1979 to 1985 by All Assam Students Union, a tripartite Assam Accord was signed. Now, because of the lot of pressure that was exerted by the people of Assam who were previously living there and their pressure group, that is All Assam Students Union, finally an accord was signed. Between whom? Between the central government, the Assam government, and the leaders of the Assam movement who were basically leading this protest against the migrants who had come to the Assam. So it was an accord that was signed between the central government, Assam government, and the leaders of the Assam government. That is known as the Assam Accord that was signed in 1985. Clear? Now you know a brief background. What happened? Influx happened, protest happened in order to resolve that, and finally, due to the continuous protest, a accord was signed between the three parties. That is why it is known as tripartite. Now see, what was the Assam Accord? That needs to be analyzed. See, key provisions of Assam Accord. See, Clause 5 of the Assam Accord addressed the foreigners issue. Foreigners who had basically come from Bangladesh, who were not basically the citizens of India during that time or residents of India, they had basically come from Bangladesh. So those are foreigners. So the base date, that means January 1, 1966, was established as a cutoff for detecting and deleting the foreigners from the electoral roll. So a date was reached on the basis of consensus that this is going to be the date based on which we will be identifying or referring who foreigners are. Now, what would be the citizenship criteria? Because we know that demography has changed. So listen and see here. Citizenship criteria. Individuals who entered India before January 1, 1966 were recognized as Indian citizens. That means all those people, whether they came from Bangladesh and they had come to India before January 1, 1966, they will be given the status of as Indian citizens. There is no issue in that. Then those arriving between January 1, 1966 and March 24, 1971 were granted citizenship but denied voting rights for 10 years. That means you would be granted citizenship, but for 10 years, you will not be allowed to vote. This was another criteria that was put there. Third, migrants arriving after March 24, 1971 were classified as illegal migrants who will have no claim over the citizenship, and they will be moved, or let us say declared as illegal migrants. That means they will be having no rights over here, and the ultimate aim was to deport them. So this is something that we realize came into a consensus that was even incorporated in the act also. We'll see that. So in 1985, to implement the Assam Accord, Section 6A was added to the Citizenship Act. So what we are reading over here is the Assam Accord, and because the accord was signed between the three parties, who were the three parties? The central government, the state government, and the people who from the Assam who were leading the movement. They signed an accord, and this was basically incorporated as under Section 6A of the Citizenship Act of 1985. This accord was implemented by giving it a legal status by incorporating this section, that is what? Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. Now, this is the aspect that you should be knowing. One more thing that is extra over here, which does not concern over here, but still we are mentioning over here, that in the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019, a new group of specific provisions, Section 6B, was also introduced. Though this is something different, just telling you that this was Section 6A, which we have dealt. In Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019, a Section 6B has also been added, which basically changes the cutoff date over here. The section cutoff date, Section 6B cutoff date is December 31, 2014, while the Section 6A cutoff date is March 25, 1971. So over here also a lot of problems have been raised, though this is not the concern that we are dealing in this particular article, but you should be knowing this is also one of the concerns that Section 6B was added. Leaving this apart, now see, if we talk about Section 6A, this is the dimension till here. This is Section 6A that was added in your Citizenship Act. Now see, what are the legal discourses or the problems that have arisen? Now please understand, the Section 6A has been challenged in the Supreme Court, and what the Supreme Court has done few months back is it has upheld the validity of the Section 6A. Now see over here, what has happened is a PIL was filed in the Supreme Court with respect to the Section 6A, and Supreme Court has upheld Section 6A. Now, this editorial that we are talking about, in the initial phase also, this talks about the upholding of Section 6A by the Supreme Court. Now, what is happening is the people who have filed with respect to the Section 6A is they believe that Section 6A also is basically leading to loss of their culture. Because though that time it was agreed that yes, the Assam Accord should be implemented, but in a long term what is happening is a lot of identification issues with respect to who the foreigners are, and a lot of things, what are delays are happening. So the people said that even Section A is basically a problematic issue because that itself is threatening the identity of the Assamese people. So when this PIL was filed in the Supreme Court response and the PIL dimensions have been mentioned over here. So what are the legal discourses with respect to the Section 6A been debating in the Supreme Court? Let us see that. First is parliamentary authority on citizenship laws. The petitioner who had filed the petition basically said that challenging the Citizenship Amendment Act argues that legal framework for granting citizenship to migrate from Pakistan is governed by Article 6 and Article 7 of the Constitution. Now see, please understand, according to the Citizenship Act also, and when we read the Constitution also, Article 6 and Article 7 of the Constitution talks about the people who had migrated to India and how they were granted citizenship. But when we talk about Section 6A, they say that these basically violate the Section 6 and 7 of the Constitution, which provides citizenship to the people who came to India from Pakistan and they were granted citizenship. So the petitioner says that Section 6A in the Constitution is a violation of Article 6 and 7 of the Constitution. Now, so therefore they said assert that addition of Section 6A should be necessitated a constitutional amendment as it alters the existing legal framework. Now please understand, if you read the article from Article 5 to Article 11, you will be realizing that it talks about the citizenship dimensions also in the Constitution. Over there, we realize that who will be granted the citizenship and all those dimensions relating to that also have been mentioned in the Constitution itself. And the people who came from Pakistan, later went to Pakistan, again returned, and all those provisions have been made in the Constitution that who shall be given the citizenship. Now over here, the petitioner says that if you are granting a citizenship to the person who is coming from Bangladesh with respect to with respect to Section 6A of the Citizenship Act, you should give it a constitutional status than merely giving it a statutory status. That means you are giving a citizenship based on a law using the Citizenship Act. And on the other hand, he contends that it will be a violation of Article 6 and 7, where the people who came from Pakistan were awarded citizenship. So people from Pakistan who came earlier on were granted citizenship of India, and for that constitutional status is there, or article is mentioned there. But for the people who came from Bangladesh, and for that we realize that we are using a law in order to implement it. So they say that this is, again, if you want to make such changes, you should bring about a constitutional amendment and then basically provide them with any citizenship or whatever dimensions that are being discussed over here. So what happens over here? The Supreme Court ruling with respect to this petitioner's view was, Supreme Court ruled that Article 6 and 7 were intended solely to determine the citizenship at the constitutional's commencement in 26 January 1950. The Supreme Court said, please listen, that the Article 6 and 7 basically lead with the citizenship should be granted to who when the Constitution basically came into force. So it is not about afterwards, it is about who should be granted when the Constitution came into force. So the Article 6 and 7 is different from the Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. So Section 6A conversely addresses the individuals not covered by the constitutional provisions. So what does the Section 6A say? Section 6A under the Citizenship Act is providing the citizenship for those which were not covered in the Constitution under Article 6 and 7. And one more thing, even the Constitution provides that the Parliament has a power to make changes with respect to who should be provided or who should be provided with the citizenship, or from whom the citizenship should be taken away also. So this is no violation according to the Supreme Court. That is why parliamentary power, entry 17 of the Union list, empowers the Parliament to legislate on citizenship, naturalization and aliens. And Article 11 of the Constitution grants Parliament the authority to make provisions with respect to acquisition and termination of the citizenship. So the first argument that the petitioner said that it is a violation of Article 6 and Article 7, the Supreme Court said it is not, because it is within the jurisdiction of the Parliament to basically pass a law and make changes. So this was one of the arguments, and this is the counter argument that the Supreme Court basically gave when it upheld the Section 6A of the Citizenship Act. Second, citizenship and the cultural rights of the Assamese people. The petitioner who had filed the petition in the Supreme Court said that, see, the petitioner argues that granting citizenship to migrants from Bangladesh under the Section 6A of the Citizenship Act basically violates the right of the indigenous Assamese people to conserve their culture. That means, according to the petitioner, 6A is basically hampering the culture of the indigenous Assamese people. Under what section, according to the petitioner? The petitioner says that Article 29(1) of the Constitution guarantees citizens the fundamental right to preserve their distinct language, script, and culture. And so the petitioner is saying that petitioner contends that conferring citizenship on the migrants increases the Bengali population and potentially undermining the cultural identity of the Assamese people. So what is the petitioner, when he was presented his PIL in the Supreme Court, basically mentioned that with the Bengali population coming from Bangladesh is increasing in Assam, it will lead to the Bengali culture being dominant over there, and that is going to harm the indigenous Assamese culture. This was basically contended by the petitioner. Now, what the Supreme Court countered this in the court was, the Supreme Court said that the Supreme Court rejected this argument, asserting that changes in the Assam demography does not inherently erode the right of the indigenous people. The court emphasized that the presence of various ethnic groups within a state enriches the India's cultural diversity rather than diminishing it. So what the Supreme Court said? Supreme Court said that with the entry of the other population, other culture also, it does not take away the rights of the indigenous people. It instead enhances the cultural diversity of India. So this argument was also nullified by the Supreme Court with respect to what the petitioner had mentioned in his PIL. Now, if you go to the third aspect, third is allegations of external aggression. Now, over here, the petitioner basically used one of the cases of the Supreme Court previously to present his argument. What does he say? Let's have a look. The petitioner also contended that Section 6A facilitates external aggression by allowing illegal migration, which they argue contradicts the Supreme Court's ruling in Sarvananda Sonowal versus Union of India 2005, where the court identified illegal migration as following under the scope of external aggression. Now, please understand. In the 2005, Supreme Court had said that illegal migration can result in they picking up arms and disturbing the harmony of a region. Right? This was mentioned in one of the arguments with respect to the other case that was going on. Now, the petitioner picked up this statement of the Supreme Court and presented his view that when the illegal migrants are coming from Bangladesh, they can be like external aggression or threat to the integrity and security of India. So what the petitioner is trying to say is the illegal immigrant, they are equating to them being a threat to the security of country. That is what is being presented in this particular argument. Now, what the Supreme Court counters this is saying that Supreme Court ruled that a law cannot be challenged for violating Article 355, which pertains to emergency provision in the Constitution. The court clarified that Section 6A does not permit unbated migration. Instead, it provides a controlled and regulated framework for migration, which does not equate to external aggression. See, there is one instance of the population that coming into India during the 1971. Yes, large number of population came from Bangladesh. But when we talk about Section 6A, over here you realize that there are certain cutoff dates, there are certain criteria that have been mentioned. Now, Section 6A does not allow, it does not say that anybody who came to India from Bangladesh at any time everybody is given citizenship. It does not say that. Had that been said, then possibly we could have equated it with the concept of external aggression, or they could be a threat. But under the Section 6A, there is a cutoff date, and we realize that those who do not meet the cutoff date can be declared as foreigners and deported. So, the concept that is mentioned in 6A does not equate to the external aggression, or just merely by their entry, they are not a threat to the security, is what is being ruled by the Honorable Supreme Court. So, this is again the aspect that is mentioned. When we move ahead, then the next was topic with respect to legal discourse. Section 6A of the Citizenship Act and the right to equality. Now, the petitioner has mentioned in front of the Supreme Court in his PIL that petitioner claimed that Section 6A violates the right to equality for two primary reasons. He said there is violation of right to equality under Article 14 of the Constitution. Article 14 of the Constitution is being violated. How? He said the concept of selective citizenship. He says that Section 6A confers citizenship exclusively to migrants in Assam, creating a distinction that they argue is unjustified. So they say, why is that section 6A is with respect to citizenship be granted to the people who came from Bangladesh and who came to Assam specifically? Why does that it not cover the migrants who came to the other states? Why aren't they being granted citizenships because they went to the other states? Why only Assam? That is one instance. Exclusion of the other states. If the goal is to curb Bangladeshi migration, then the exclusion of other border states, like for that matter, West Bengal also, border states from similar provision raises question about the fairness and equality with respect to the migrational issues across India. So this was a fair enough argument that was raised by the petitioner, where he says that Section 6 is dealing with the citizenship be granted to the people who came from Bangladesh with respect to the cutoff dates, with respect to Assam in specific. It doesn't mention about other states like, for that matter, let us say West Bengal or Bihar, for that matter, people going to even regions like Delhi also. Why aren't they mentioned? Why exclusively those who came to Assam? See, so this was one of the arguments that is presented. What the Supreme Court says is, the Supreme Court upheld Section 6A, emphasizing that the scale of migration into Assam and its unique impact on the cultural and political rights of Assamese and the tribal population warranted special consideration. The court found that magnitude of influx in Assam is significantly higher than the other states, so a differentiated approach was followed. So the Supreme Court over here, mentioned very specifically, the case where Assam is a state where the migration that took place was to a larger magnitude or a larger degree. First. Second, it is having its tribal population also. Along with it, we realize that the impact that the migration had with respect to Assam was assumed to be more than the other state, and that is why specific provisions had to be made with respect to the state of Assam than the other states. And one more reason was the movement that was held against the illegal migrants that came to India was more dominant in the state of Assam. Through what we saw, unions like ASU were created, which basically led to a lot of protest for the people who came from Bangladesh. Similar degree of protests were not seen in the other states also. So based on the impact the large-scale migration had in Assam, special provision with respect to the Citizenship Act had to be done. And that is why Section 6A was basically incorporated in the Citizenship Act of 1955. And that is why is a reason being presented over here. Now, one more thing, NRC, National Register of Citizens, is something that you should be knowing. Assam is basically a list of the Indian citizens living in the state. The Citizens Register, the Citizens Register sets out to identify the foreign nationals in the state that border Bangladesh. The process to update the register began following the Supreme Court's order in 2013, with the state's nearly 33 million people having to prove that they are Indian nationals before March 24, 1971. Updated final NRC was released on August 31st. There were 1.9 million applicants failing to be in the list. So this is again a list of the citizens of India who are in the state of Assam. This was basically done with respect to the rulings previously that was given by the Honorable Supreme Court. Now, the question that comes, what the editorial also says, whatever you have seen over here is said by the petitioner is basically an argument that is given by the writers over here. They are basically trying to favor the petitioner also over here. That is why they say that there is Article 29 is being basically violated, and that is why we see that the Supreme Court ruling or the judgment that is given violates the cultural as well as the linguistic rights of the Assamese people. Along with the other issues that have been highlighted are that there are the process of identification and all is very lengthy, because the state has to identify. Then it will go to the foreign tribunal. Then the tribunal will take a decision. So it is a very lengthy process. And that is why we realize that meanwhile the people are staying there, that is basically hindering the linguistic and the cultural rights of the Assamese people. So all that we see over here is that Section 6A has been upheld by by this Honorable Supreme Court, and it does not violate the cultural or the linguistic rights of them. It is basically means to have a controlled migration that took place, and obviously it has set a cutoff date which will identify, which has to be, again, the process has to be fastened because it is taking a lot of time. That is something that the Supreme Court can also rule, but according to the judgment given by the Supreme Court, it is according to the principles of the Constitution. So that is what is basically being discussed in this particular article. If we move ahead, making affordable generics more reliable. Now you very often hear the word generic medicines, right? Please understand, this concept has to be understood very well. Now let us understand in very brief words. So then we will see the definition also. Supposingly there's a company, let us say Ranbaxy, right? Or some Abbott, right? Ranbaxy, you know what, they're big companies. Now supposingly that company uh, puts a lot of investment into discovery, or let us say um coming out with a new drug in a market with respect to any disease, to counter that disease. Now they might have put in billions of dollars in order to research, in order to go through the trials and then finally get an approval from the government. And then finally the drug comes into the market. Now, because that particular company had put in a lot of effort, lot of money, a lot of research, it definitely will take a patent for it also. Now, the patent, that is exclusive right with respect to manufacturing and with respect to its profiting, it has exclusive right because only that company can manufacture it and sell it. Now, that patent is granted for 20 years, right? It is granted for 20 years. Now, when the 20 years are over, that means the exclusive right to manufacture that particular drug goes away from that particular company, let us say Ranbaxy. Now, what were the constituents of that particular drug, which includes a lot of constituents, which are basically known as APIs, right? So, what are the ingredients in that particular drug is also disclosed to the other companies. Also, that is available to the companies, but they earlier, before 20 years, could not basically manufacture that drug because the patent was with the, let us say, Ranbaxy company. Now, once 20 years are over, that means the patent date for, or let which was granted to Ranbaxy or any particular company is over, the other companies can use the formulation that Ranbaxy had basically created and manufacture the same drugs at using their companies. Let us say a very small company, let us say Cipla for that matter. Let us say Cipla creates a exact same drug using its using the composition that Ranbaxy had created, and then creates a similar drug, which is not a branded drug, because the branded drugs were the ones who had manufactured it actually, and they were the ones who were manufacturing and selling it. Now, other companies using the formulation of the, let us say Ranbaxy, which had actually created a drug, using their formulation, other companies are also creating similar drugs, because now the drugs being created by them would be of a cheaper price. But the issue that arises, will that be of the same quality? That is what raises the concerns also. So in simple words, what we realize is that generic medicines are those medicines which are created, which are non-branded in a form, created by companies which are cheaper in price because the patent date was over with respect to the company that had manufactured a particular drug. Now, there is a lot of issues also that come up because, see, if a company A, or let us say Ranbaxy, or let us say Abbott, whatever be the major company which had manufactured a drug, for the 20 years it has already made all the profit, but it would like that the profit should continue. They would again try to create a perception in the market that the generic medicines are not good. They are bad. Why? Because if the perception increases or improves that the generic medicines are good, then the people will not be buying those branded drugs from those big pharmaceutical companies. That is why you must realize that government of India is one of the biggest exporters of the generic medicines to the various countries, including Africa, even some regions of Europe also. This thing needs to be analyzed well, that the perception that is created should be changed. That is why when the perception is changed, the reliability factor in the minds of the people will also change. Now see here. A generic drug is a pharmaceutical product that contains the same active ingredient. Active ingredients are the one because of which are basically the ingredients which are basically countering the problem that you have in a body, right? The constituent or the chemical constituent that is there, that is the active ingredient, in the same dosage form, strength, and has the same therapeutic effect, that means impacting the body, as reference product, but is marketed under a different name. Let us say original drug is manufactured by, let us say, Abbott, right? Now it manufactures a drug, let us say, let us say any COVID drug, let us say COVID drug, and let us say it will work very good, and that one dose one dose, let us say, cost rupees 10,000. After, let us say, 20 years, after 20 years, we see a small drug company, another company, company A, uses the same constituent or whatever the dosage was and manufactures this same drug, and their one dosage or one dose basically is rupees 100. Rupees 100. Now, this is under a different name because originally it was manufactured by Abbott branded company. So this is a branded drug. On the other hand, after 20 years, because the patent date is over on this drug, another company can use the constituent that was done or research that was done by Abbott and manufacture the drug because all the research had already been done by Abbott. So now the spending need not be done by this particular company. So what happens is that it can manufacture a drug that will be very cheap. So this is known as a generic drug. Now, it does not mean that it is of an inferior quality. Please understand. It is a perception that is created in the market. Is it of inferior quality? It is not. Now, let us see the difference. Branded drugs and the generic medicines. See, active ingredients. Same active ingredients as the generic drugs, same active ingredients as the branded. So there is no difference in the active ingredients because what the constituent has been, it is already disclosed by the main branded company as per the laws that are given. So effectiveness must undergo rigorous clinical trials to prove effectiveness, must demonstrate bioequivalence. What does bioequivalence means? That the drug that is created by the company, which is by this company, should show a similar effect that the branded drug was showing. So that is bioequivalence. Cost more expensive, obviously less expensive, protected by patent for 20 years. Before the 20 years are over, no other company can manufacture this drug. After 20 years, any company can manufacture. So not protected by patents, marketing heavily marketed by pharmaceutical companies, not as heavily marketed as a branded, available in limited quantities, widely available. Why limited quantities? Because it is only the company which has researched, manufactured that company, only that company will be providing you with the drugs. Over here, many companies can provide. Let us say if we see paracetamol, one paracetamol from one company might be, one capsule might be, let us say, of 50 rupees. Another, it will be less than 5 rupees. That is what the difference is. Same constituent, same strength, but different companies, the one that manufactured paracetamol will obviously cost a premium on that. Now, what are the advantages and benefits associated with the generic medicines? First of all, it is cost effective because it is not as expensive as our branded ones. Increased access, because earlier on the branded drugs are being manufactured by one particular firm and it will be the lone supplier. So what happens is that the quantity that is manufactured might be limited and the access will also be limited. But in case of the generic medicines, various companies might be manufacturing that drug and very widely and easily accessible. Equivalent quality and efficacy. See, what we need to analyze is when the manufacturing of a generic drug is taking place, it is using the same active ingredient, same strength is there. So the effect and impact is also the same. It is the perception that is created that because it is not from the original company which manufactured the drug or discovered the drug, that is why it is of an inferior quality. That is a wrong perception that is created. One should understand that. Competition and innovation. Now, increased competition among the generic drugs can drive innovation and reduce the prices further for the consumers. Now, who are the people or bodies associated with the regulation of the generic drugs in India? Please understand, the regulatory process of generic medicines in India are governed by Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940 and the rules of 1945. Next, the Central Drug Standards Control Organization. CDSCO is a national regulatory authority for drugs and cosmetics in India. It is responsible for reviewing and approving the generic drug applications and inspection of the manufacturing facilities. The National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, it is responsible for regulating the pricing of the drugs in India. So these are the bodies which are associated with the approval, regulation, and monitoring with respect to the generic drugs also. Now, the problem that arises, what are the challenges that are associated? Now see, there are a lot of challenges. If I see first is a perception. Now, because the pharmaceutical companies who are those manufacturing the branded drugs do not want the generic medicines to proliferate in the market. There is a reason behind it. If the generic drugs manufacturers are going to manufacture the drugs that were discovered by the companies who are already manufactured, it will be losses for them. So the perception that is created in the markets is that these generic drugs are bad. They are not. Even though doctors to a great extent are paid by these big pharmaceutical companies to propagate this factor that take branded drugs only, not the generic drugs. This is something done by the doctors also, because they're paid many times by the big pharmaceutical companies. So the perception that creates that is it of an inferior quality is what is a major challenge. So lack of understanding or misconception. Second is brand loyalty. Sometimes even when we talk about clothes, people have brand loyalty. With respect to drugs also, various people have brand loyalty that this is a drug manufacturing company, whether it is expensive, will buy from there only because it gives good product. So brand loyalty dimension also comes here. Even our doctors that prescribe refer to certain specific drugs because they're paid commissions for that. That also creates an issue. Next, trust and misinformation. Now, issue of substandard, counterfeit, all these dimensions where trust erosion can take place. Prescription practices. Now, the healthcare professionals or the doctors basically prescribe you specific medicines. This is the medicine that you need to buy. And when you ask them, is there any alternative? They would say, no, this is the medicine that you need to buy. And they prescribe you the branded drug only because they're getting the commission. So they will not subscribe you or prescribe you the generic drugs, though the duty should be that they should give the salt name rather than giving a brand name. Fifth, regulatory compliance. Ensuring consistent adherence to quality standards across all generic drugs poses a challenge because regulating all these generic medicines becomes a challenge with respect to the structure that we have over here. So that is why that also leads to a problematic issue with respect to which all companies are manufacturing the generic drugs. Price differentiation. Despite more affordable, even the generic drugs also have a lot of price variation. Let us say one capsule of one branded drug is, let us say, 100 rupees. Now the generic medicines, because it is depending upon what the manufacturers want to price it, one can be of 1 rupee, can be of 20 rupees, other can be of 30 rupees, other can be 15 rupees. So a lot of price differentiation is there within the generic medicines also. Now that creates problem for the consumers which to buy. Next is intellectual property concerns. Now what happens is very often there is delay in the approval with respect to the generic drugs also, because many cases do come up by the the manufacturers who are manufacturing the branded medicines, because they do not want the other companies to make or manufacture the generic drugs. And that is why we realize very often cases at the international level also come up when, let us say, the other few companies might be granted the permission to manufacture a generic drug. So a lot of disputes with respect to intellectual property rights to come up also. Next, steps taken by the government to promote the generic medicines. Establishment of what? The Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Kendra, which basically provide you with the generic medicines at those centers. Mobile application Jan Aushadhi Sugam, mobile app that offers information with respect to the locations where you can get the generic medicines. Regulatory directives. The government regulations mandate physicians to prescribe drugs using the generic names. NHM Free Drug Initiative. The National Health Mission supports the provision for essential generic medicines free of cost at the public health centers. Quality assurance. Now, Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Kendra sells only quality generic medicines. So this has been done by Government of India. Regulatory measures by the Health Ministry and CDSCO. So proper measures are taken by them so that the quality of the generic medicines also remain at par with the other companies that are manufacturing the branded drugs. Bioequivalent studies. Amendment to the drugs and cosmetic rules requires the applicants to submit the bioequivalent study. That means a drug that is manufactured by them produces the same result as the other branded drugs. So those studies are done. Proper naming and branding. Amendment mandates the application of the drug license to use proper generic names if marketed under a branded name. Next is pricing regulation. Again, NPA fixes a ceiling price for the scheduled medicines under the DPCO 2013 rules. Now, please understand, this is done by the in Government of India so that the perception also changes. The problems that are associated with generic medicines also change. So we need to analyze as people that generic medicines are also no less than the branded medicines. It is just the marketing gimmick that is done by the major pharmaceutical companies. And that is what we see over here. The problems that are done is what we have to change as perception, as raise awareness among the people, which the Government of India right now is doing through these various dimensions. So let's move ahead. Mains question of the day. What do you understand by generic medicines? What are the issues associated with them? 15 marker. Please do this. This is important with respect to, you can be asked in your GS 3. Next, prelims topics. Wildlife experts almost build blind Ganges river dolphin for the first time. So what are the river Ganges dolphin? Please understand. Scientific name is Platinsta gangetica. The common name, it is known as susu, sus, shusuk, sosho, reminiscent of the noise that the dolphins make when it breathes. So this is basically the dolphin. Now see, gangetic dolphin is basically recognized as the national aquatic animal of India. Habitat, it is a freshwater rivers. They are commonly found in the deeper sections of the rivers, prefer the eddies among the islands, river bends, and confluences. Distribution historically extends to the Ganges, Brahmaputra, Meghna, and Karnafuli and Sangu river system of Nepal and India and Bangladesh, but presently it is found in the Ganges and the tributaries as it went extinct from most of the earlier distribution zones. So though it was found earlier in the Brahmaputra region also, but now presently they are confined to Ganga and Brahmaputra, Ganga and its tributaries. Earlier on they were found in these regions also. So this is the distribution. When it comes to the features, it is known as a tiger of the Ganges. It is a top predator on the ecosystem indicator species. Echolocation, they are essentially blind. They hunt by emitting ultrasonic sound in order to identify the prey, which bounces off the fish, enabling them to imagine in their mind, or the picture is created in the mind, that where the particular object or the fish is. Protection status and the wildlife protection, Schedule 1, IUCN endangered, Science, it is Appendix 1. Threats, water-related threats, infrastructure like dams, barrages, diversions, embankments basically lead to the habitat fragmentation. Even hunting for oil and meat has been seen. Pollution in the rivers like the Ganges from domestic, industrial, and agriculture waste does pose a lot of challenge to the river dolphins at the present. Human activities including boat traffic, dredging, underwater noise also creates a lot of problem to their existence. Conservation, the project Gangetic Dolphin was launched in 2023 for the conservation of the Gangetic Dolphin. This project was launched. Let's have a look. This basically is a 10-year project to focus both on the river and the sea dolphin. Please remember, focusing both on the sea and the river dolphin. Aim to strengthen the biodiversity and create employment opportunities through attracting tourism over here. Killing, habitat fragmentation by dam basically needs to be regulated so that a proper habitat is presented for their survival. Ganges river dolphin, species of the freshwater dolphin, is primarily found in the Ganges and Brahmaputra rivers and the tributaries. These dolphins are basically sighted in the deep water. So what is this basically project doing? It is the aim is to focus on the survival protection of the river dolphins in the river as well as the sea regions across the Indian coastline. So what is important over here? That this can be quoted in your answers with respect to the initiative that is taken by the government for the protection of the river dolphins or the project dolphins. Now let's moving ahead. Second survey ship INS Nirdeshak introduced into the Navy. Before I go into the understanding that second ship, then what is this first ship also? So please understand, recently INS Nirdeshak, the second survey vessel large SVL, was commissioned into Indian Navy at Vishakhapatnam Naval Dock. Now you see the second survey vessel large SVL. What is this SVL before we understand and move ahead? See, what is SVL? SVL project, contract for building SVL ships by the Ministry of Defense and GRSC Kolkata, October 2018. The objective is to replace the aging survey vehicles with modern ships to collect the oceanographic data. Now completion, the project is set to complete the construction of all four by end of 2024, but we realize that due to COVID, the deadlines have been extended. Now there are four large survey vessels which will be inducted in the Indian Navy. First, we have the Satyadhak. This has already been inducted. This is the first. Second is Nirdeshak. Third is Ikshak, and then is Sanshodak. Now this is the fourth one. Now two are remaining that will be inducted. So second is Nirdeshak. Now let's see what are the key features. It is the second vessel under the Indian Navy survey vessel large project, part of the four ship SVL project initiative pivotal to the India's hydrographical study as well as the naval operations. Design and dimension engineered by the hydrographic survey across Indian coastal and deep sea regions. Construction built by Garden Research Shipbuilding Engineers, Kolkata. Reflects the India's focus on indigenous building, where 80% of the components are basically indigenously procured. Only 20% are from the foreign, which would be slowly in a phased wise, you'll be realizing that also done by the Indian companies itself. Significance, it is important from the hydrographic studies because that form a core with respect to the Indian Navy strategy also. Strategic value, important from the Indian Ocean region, analysis, whatever minerals can be found there, and the further studies. Indigenous capability with respect to manufacturing of these ships. Support for the nation building contributes strengthening India's blue economy as well. So moving ahead, CCTNS that is mentioned. What is CCTNS? Please understand, crime and criminal tracking network and system. Now please understand what it is. CCTNS was conceptualized by the Ministry of Home Affairs under the National's e-governance plan of India, being implemented as mission mode project since 2009. Now, it is an ambitious project which aims to put in place a comprehensive and integrated system for enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of policing at the police station level throughout the country. So it is basically interlinking all the police stations under a common application software for the purpose of investigation and analysis. Now, let us say a person does a crime in one state, and if he goes to other state, the FIR or some cases being registered, it can also be seen by the people from the other states also, the police authorities. So it is basically integrating the data from all the police stations across the country, and that will be useful for research, analysis, and tracking of the issues, or tracking the criminals also for that matter. So that is why providing citizen services like reporting, tracking of complaints, request, and verification with the police. The records of the crime and criminals are available at one police station will also be accessible at the other police station. So one crime done at one place can be tracked at the other places also, and any person from any police station from one part of the country can access the complaints that are filed in some other police station also. So that means it is basically integrating all the police complaints, details that are associated in one station with across the country. Objective to make police functioning a citizen-friendly and a more transparent mechanism. Then second is utilization of the information and communication technology through citizen-centric services. Provide investigation officers with the tools and technology to facilitate a proper investigation. Then improve police functioning, facilitate interaction and sharing of the information among the police station, assist the senior police officers for better management of the police forces, keep track of the progress with respect to the cases and including the courts, reduce manual reduction of the record keeping through a electronic or a ICT mechanism. Project is being implemented in close collaboration with the states and the union government, and National Crime Record Bureau is a central nodal agency for manages the CCTNS. Now, next is Cyclone Chido. Now, please understand, Cyclone Chido recently stung 𝐂𝐇, a French Indian Ocean territory located in the Mozambique Channel. The wind speed reached 200 kilometers per hour, making it the strongest cyclone to hit 𝐂𝐇 in over 90 years. What is 𝐂𝐇? It is a geographical location. 𝐂𝐇 is a part of the Comoros archipelago, situated in the Mozambique Channel in the Indian Ocean. Consists of the two main islands, that is Grande and the Petite Terre. Now please see, this is the track that was basically being followed. Over here is 𝐂𝐇 along with the Comoros Island. Now please understand, an important thing is that with respect to the speed that this cyclone took or adopted, that is why it makes it something very different. Why? See, we realize that this cyclone can be categorized as a super cyclone. The super cyclone which sustained with a wind speed exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. Now, because it is about more than 200 kilometers, so this was not simply a cyclone, but a super cyclone. And please understand what is now it becomes important is in the examination they can ask you what is a super cyclone. So the criteria for super cyclone is that the wind speed, sustained wind speed of over 220 kilometers or higher. Classification, categorized as a category 4 or 5 storm by the Saffir-Simpson scale, and low central pressure, extremely low central pressure below 920 HPA. So this is again one of the categories that can be asked in your prelims, what is a super cyclone. So let's move ahead, multiple choice questions. Question number 1, you can have a look at them. This is the options. Then you have the solution, answer D. Question 2, these are the question. You can pause the video and have a look at it and attempt it. Then you have the options. And then you have the answer, that is C. Question number 3, pause the video. Attempt the options. You can have a look at the options and attempt them. Then next is the answer, that is 3 is B. Question 4, pause the video, see what it has in store for you. Then we have the options, and the solution is answer is 4A. Question 5, question with the options. Have a look at it. You can pause the video. It is important. Then the solution 5D. Sorry, 5D. Okay, this was the analysis of the Hindu from today's newspaper. Hope you liked it and enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. We'll be continuing with a class lecture tomorrow with respect to the current affairs. Please be active. This is what you require for the civil services. We do not cover the extra stuff because which is not relevant. Otherwise, filling a newspaper with every small article is very easy. But that is why we have to adopt a very targeted approach with respect to the civil services examination. Hope you enjoyed it, learned. Take care, and Jai Hind.